The following story tells of the adventures of two young people who travel to the countryside to visit a grandmother, seeking to enjoy the fresh air and the beauty of nature. My protagonist and her boyfriend anticipated a peaceful retreat filled with fishing and swimming in the river. But their plans took a surprising turn after an unexpected discovery by the water's edge. This chance find sparked a series of mystical and eerie events, prompting them to realize that every object might hold its own hidden story. Sit back and prepare to immerse yourself in an atmosphere of mystery and unexplained phenomena against the backdrop of serene village life.
My boyfriend and I decided to visit my grandmother in the countryside for a relaxing getaway. He was excited about fishing, while I looked forward to swimming in the deep river teeming with various fish. We packed our things early in the morning and headed to the river. It was a beautiful sunny day. I spent most of the time swimming while he focused on catching fish. After a while, he called out to me, "Jane, come look at my catch." Reluctantly, I walked over, not particularly interested in fish. But what he had in his net wasn't just fish. He had found a small oval brooch. It looked silver and seemed well preserved despite being underwater. "Look, Jane, this river knows what a wonderful and beautiful girl you are and has given you a gift," he said, handing it to me. Flattered by his compliment, I accepted the charming trinket. In the evening, dressed in a light summer dress, I pinned the brooch on. We wandered around the village until late at night, eventually hurrying home as I worried my grandmother might be getting anxious. "Grandma must be worried," I said, quickening our pace. The night was clear and very still. Our path took us near the river. As we walked along the bank, a mist began to rise from the water. We exchanged puzzled glances but kept walking. The fog thickened, making it hard to see the way. Terrified, I reached for my boyfriend, but it felt like something yanked his hand away from mine. Panicking, I called out to him, but all I could hear was the sound of water splashing. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the mist. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. It was a young girl, about 12 years old. She was soaking wet, reaching out toward me. As she came closer, I saw water dripping from her hair and tattered clothes, her eyes red and filled with real tears. She reached out her hands and said, "Give it back to me. It's mine. Please give it back." Fear gripped me, and I felt frozen with terror. Without understanding why, I turned and ran, desperate to get away from the river. I snapped back to reality when I saw the light in my grandmother's house. Rushing inside, I found my boyfriend anxiously waiting. He asked where I had gone and how I could leave him behind. I ran to my grandmother crying and told her the whole story. She listened thoughtfully, then her gaze fixed on the brooch. "Jane, where did you get that?" she asked. I recounted how my boyfriend had found it. Grandma sighed and shared a tale from long ago about a poor family in the village. There was a little girl who was somewhat of a loner and wasn't liked by the other children. One day she was surrounded by boys who teased her and noticed the brooch on her dirty dress. They snatched it from her and ran to the river. She chased after them, begging for it back. But one of the boys accidentally dropped the brooch into the water, and the girl, without hesitation, jumped in after it. She was never seen again. I spent the whole night thinking about the poor little girl. The next morning, my boyfriend and I went to the river to return the brooch. As he prepared to throw it into the water, I stopped him. I took off my sundress, pinned the brooch to it, wrapped it around a stone, and threw it into the river. We walked back home with me in my swimsuit and his t-shirt. That night, I had a beautiful dream. In it, the girl, now radiant and dressed in my sundress with her beloved brooch, stood by the river. She smiled, waved at me, ran up to hug me, and said, "Jane, thank you."
The next story will captivate your imagination and make you ponder the thin line between our world and the supernatural. This tale, filled with mysticism and inexplicable phenomena, will be narrated by our heroine. She encountered something truly terrifying in her childhood, and these events remain a mystery to her to this day. Get ready to dive into a world of night visions and strange premonitions that make you believe in the existence of something far greater than just dreams. So, let's begin.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I experienced something I still can't forget. It was related to my aunt, my mother's sister, who passed away at the age of 36. This loss was hard on the entire family, but for me, a little child, it became the source of frightening and mysterious night visions that haunted me for several nights in a row. It all started one night when I, as usual, went to bed in my room. Nothing foreshadowed trouble, and silence enveloped the house as everyone went to sleep. But in the middle of the night, I woke up with a strange feeling something was wrong. The room was dark, with only the faint light of the moon filtering through the curtains. And then I saw her. From the wardrobe in the corner of the room, a woman slowly emerged. In one hand, she held a large candlestick with a burning candle, the light casting eerie shadows on the walls. The woman was dressed in a long nightgown, her face pale, and her eyes fixed on me. I wanted to scream, but fear paralyzed me, and my voice caught in my throat. She came closer, stopped at our feet, and looked at me and my sleeping sister. I barely managed to whisper, "Mom, there she is," but my mother couldn't see her. No one but me could see her. She stood there for about 5 minutes, not taking her eyes off us, and then slowly, very slowly, retreated back into the wardrobe and disappeared. I was so terrified that I couldn't fall asleep again. The next day, I told my mother about my vision, but she just said it was just a dream. However, the next night it happened again. Once more, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw the same woman emerging from the wardrobe with the candlestick in her hand. She approached us again and stood there, watching, while I shivered in fear under the blanket. Again, I tried to wake my mother, but once more, no one but me could see her. These night visions continued for several nights in a row, and each time I felt the same terror. Seeing her pale face and the burning candle in her hand, I began to fear falling asleep, knowing she would return. At that moment, I didn't understand what was happening, but now, looking back, I think it was my aunt returning to say goodbye or to warn me about something important. In addition, I had many other instances where I dreamt of things that predicted the future. One such dream stands out. I saw one of my relatives falling ill, and a few days later, it actually happened. The dreams warned me of upcoming events, and each time it filled me with fear and anxiety. These experiences left a deep mark on my memory. Even now, years later, I recall those nights with a chill in my chest. Sometimes it seems to me that the world of spirits and dreams is much closer than we think, and that they can interact with our reality, sending signs and warnings.
The story tells of inexplicable and frightening events that happened to a hotel receptionist during her night shift, despite the hotel being nearly empty, except for a few male guests. The receptionist encountered a series of strange phenomena. Here's what she recounted.
Several years ago, I worked as a receptionist at a local hotel where the shifts were 24 hours on, 72 hours off. During one of those night shifts, as usual, I was sitting at the reception desk, listening to the silence that settled after the daytime staff had gone home. It was already evening, and everything seemed calm until the silence was broken by a phone call from room 206. The room number appeared on the phone display, and, not expecting anything unusual, I answered the call. On the other end of the line was a woman's voice asking to be connected to a certain phone number. Since guests couldn't make direct calls from their rooms, all calls had to go through the receptionist. But that wasn't the issue. What surprised me was that it was a woman calling, even though the hotel was almost empty that day, and all the occupied rooms were exclusively filled with male guests on business trips. The woman gave me a number, and as usual, I replied, "I'll connect you now," and proceeded to dial the given number. But the answering machine said, "This number does not exist." A bit puzzled, I decided to call back room 206 to inform them that the number they provided was incorrect. To my surprise, no one answered. Then I froze in shock. Room 206 wasn't occupied. I tried to calm myself, thinking that perhaps one of the staff had checked someone into that room and forgotten to record it. Opening the key cabinet, I was stunned. The key to room 206 was in its rightful place, meaning the room was empty. You might suggest that someone else could have had a key, but that was impossible. The only other key was with the housekeeper, who had gone home long ago, as it was around 7 or 8 in the evening. Gathering my courage, I went up to the second floor and opened room 206. The room was completely empty and clean, with no signs of occupancy. I began to reassure myself with the thought that perhaps our phone system had malfunctioned and displayed the wrong room number. Maybe the call had come from another occupied room. Calmed down, I went to bed. The night passed surprisingly quietly. No guests came down to me. No one arrived or left. In the morning, the guests started waking up and leaving, all of them men, not a single woman among them. The hotel's front door had remained locked the whole time, and I had the only key, so the possibility of female guests randomly entering was out of the question. Other staff members told me that sometimes at night, they heard footsteps on the stairs, as if someone was coming down, but no guests were visible. One night, footsteps were heard at the front door, as if someone was wiping their shoes on the doormat, even though the door was locked. Lately, I had started to fear being alone in the hotel in the evenings, though I couldn't understand what exactly I was afraid of, just that I was scared. I couldn't sleep with the lights off, even though I had always slept soundly before. It wasn't the tipsy guests that frightened me, but something entirely unknown and inexplicable